I'm Dan Drake. This is Front Up on Visitor Network TV. This is one of a series of interviews that we're doing with candidates for office in the town elections in April. And today we have with us Jeanne Miller, who is running for Land Bank Commissioner. And Jeanne, this is not your first go at it.
No, it's not.
You tried last year and were almost successful.
I was. 49 votes last year.
Mm-hmm. There are three candidates this time. How do you think, before we get into why you're running,
okay.
How do you think that's going to play out with three candidates?
Well, we had three candidates last year.
Okay.
So it was the same kind of thing. So it was interesting in looking at the numbers. You know, you really get split up between three people.
Mm-hmm.
So last year was a short margin of 49 votes, so I figured I can't not try again.
No, absolutely.
So we shall see. Three different people. Phil Bartlett's the incumbent.
Right.
He's been on the commission since its inception, so he's been there for a long time. And Dick Glidden, who I don't think's run for a public election before, so a newcomer, an incumbent, and me trying again.
Well, that's great. I'm glad you are. At least there are some candidates for a couple of the offices.
So only two contested races.
That's right, which is pretty sad. So thank you and congratulations for being part of one of them.
Or being crazy. Why couldn't I go for one of those that were uncontested? I could have walked into another spot.
Well,
I like the land.
Why don't we revisit the issue of why you want to be on the land bank?
I love what the land bank has been doing with the properties that they have on the island. I love the fact that we have so much open space, but I'd like to see it used more. I use the land bank properties a lot, but I don't think that they're made publicly aware certainly to people who come in the summer. And it's such a great way to use Nantucket at no price. So when you come to Nantucket and you feel like you're being gouged at every angle, from restaurants to stores to anything you do, here's something that is free and wonderful. But I'd like to see the land bank spend a little more time and money putting effort into making that people aware of the properties and having them be used more.
That's only one thing, the land bank. I mean, the land bank acquired those properties as part of its mission. And the mission is a little broader than just recreational use of its properties.
Well, it's more broad than, as far as, like, Conservation Foundation doesn't have the public use piece to it, whereas the land bank does. So, yeah, the soccer fields and certainly the golf clubs and pieces like that are for the public. And then now the pieces they're buying along Washington Street, more for public view, so that when you're driving around, we all get to see the harbor, rather than just those that have harborfront property.
And what can you bring to the position?
I can bring desire to do more. I can bring knowledge of Nantucket. I've lived here for over 33 years. I use the properties, and I don't just focus on a few of them, because I think it's the smaller ones that they don't know about.
What's your favorite?
I think I talked last year a lot about the Labyrinth, which is this piece of property that so many people don't know about.
That's right,
and
you did.
That's definitely my favorite kind of hidden piece. They've done a lot of cutting out in Sconset now on their new property, and walking that is fun. And then I have a little free library on land bank property that I think they've done creative things, so I want to see more of that. So those are my favorite ones so far.
The money keeps pouring in. I know we talked about this last year, but is the basic mission of the land bank to acquire open space still viable on Nantucket?
I think now, by acquiring small pieces, connector pieces, like on Washington Street and things like that. There's not a lot of large swaths of land left. Housing, we both know, is the #1 problem on Nantucket.
Right.
I wouldn't mind seeing some land swaps going on. That could, if in the future there's a piece of property that the land bank that could swap, that could be used for housing, whereas another piece that the town buys or someone else buys wouldn't be kind of viable for housing.
The present time, that kind of swap, I think, takes an act of the legislature, doesn't it?
Yeah. I'm not saying these things are easy by any means, but I know people often say, can it be split 1% to housing, 1% to land bank? Why does the 2% have to go to land bank? And that takes a huge act of legislation.
Right.
They've already gone up to the State House and tried to do something like that already.
Not recently, though. I don't think.
No, a few years back. But so, yeah, I'm open certainly to have us work in some way to have that housing issue, a bite of that taken off. And I don't know the answer of how it could be done. I do know the land bank still needs the money that's coming in. They've got, bonds that they have to pay off, and it's not like they're sitting on a pile of cash. That cash is, there's debt there as well. So it'll be time before they can do that. But pieces of property are coming open on the waterfront that wouldn't be used for any affordable housing. They would only be used if a developer or if someone bought them for another large house. So I'd like to see the land bank get that. And then that's where I'm thinking as far as making the trade and somehow getting a piece of property that could be used for housing. But I won't know the answers until I get in that executive session.
I think it's, there's a fundamental issue of a community decision, essentially, of whether the land bank, in some fashion, is, the enabling legislation is in some fashion amended to support a role in housing.
Right.
And if that were...
Which I think they do on the Vineyard. For their land bank.
Do they? I don't know.
I was just listening to the radio the other day. I heard something talking about that.
It just seems to me that it's a question of, even if it's some land bank property that can be identified for that purpose,
right?
A certain percentage.
Right.
Would you support something like that?
I would support something like that. Sure. Oh. If it was a piece of land that, there's a lot of issues. We're talking about habitat that's being preserved and things like that. So it's not always just about open space and open land. Sometimes it's important land, the burial grounds that have to be preserved and things like that.
That's right.
So, but we could talk about housing and things that could happen there that have nothing to do with the land bank. I'm one of the proponents of I'd like zoning to change so we could have apartments, because I think that would serve.
You're preaching to the choir there, as you know.
I am. I think we all want the same thing. We all want people to have what they need on Nantucket to stay on Nantucket.
This is more a question for your husband, Bruce Miller, who is still a selectman for a short amount of time.
He can count down the meetings.
It seems to me that this is an area where the Board of Selectmen, along with some others, where the Board of Selectmen need to take the initiative and just say, we need to, as part of our rezoning efforts at town meeting.
I think zoning is definitely the piece of it. The Richmond group that came out with that plan for 60 houses, I think that's a great idea for them to try to jump on the bandwagon of helping with housing, because it's obviously our number one problem. But that kind of housing I don't think is going to be necessarily the issue, and everyone doesn't need to be a homeowner.
That's right.
It's really rental properties. Rental properties that you can stay in for 12 months.
It depends. It depends on, there's some people who want to be would like to be homeowners. Sure. And if you can figure out a way that they can afford being homeowners, which is very problematic, then it would work. But anyway, at least the land acquisition
That's why I'm not running for selectman. Those problems are a little larger than I can solve.
The land acquisition for housing is a very expensive piece of the cost of the housing. And if somehow this tax could be split, and some of it used for that, is that a good idea?
I would be supportive of that. I would. I'd probably not make a lot of friends on the Land Bank Commission. Although I don't know at this point. It's been around for over 20 years, so it may be ready to make some changes on that board.
Do you go to the meetings?
I don't go. Yes, I've gone to many meetings. I haven't gone to meetings recently because, to be honest, everything happens in executive session on that board, which is what I'm anxious to get to. So I love the public opening part is nice.
Do they discuss their policy issues in executive session?
I think so.
They shouldn't.
Well,
I don't think.
I'm
not a lawyer.
Accuse me of anything.
I'm not accusing you of anything.
I've sat through the public portion, but I know certainly the money that gets discussed during executive session and what the plans, what's going to happen, and so that's the part I want to get into.
Yeah, well, that's good. But it would be nice if, I understand negotiation.
I'm sure the policy, if anyone is in the room that wants to discuss policy, I have to say their meetings are not attended very often by public
Most of them
So.
aren't. The airport commission ones aren't either
Yeah.
anymore.
So,
So,
so if someone has an issue, they come and bring it forth. But
what
so what they do, which I think is interesting, what they do is they have their executive session first,
Mhm.
and so afterwards they
sort of
open
summarize
to the public. So
summarize
determining
what
when that's going to happen
Yeah.
can be. challenge.
what do you think is the biggest challenge that the land bank faces today in its current configuration?
The biggest challenge, I think, is how do I, the golf club. The biggest challenge is the golf club and not making it dominate everything that goes on in the office, because it's only a small part of that office. I am thrilled that, well, first of all, I laughed to hear that I was considered a golfer in the paper last week, because anyone who has ever golfed with me would really laugh at that a lot. Yes, I do own clubs, and yes, we go out once in a while. Mostly it's to Skinner's. We go to a public course. I don't belong to any golf courses, and as I say, not a very good golfer. But I think the fact that the land bank owns the only 2 public courses is huge. To come to this island and not be able to play golf, unless you were a member of a club, would be horrendous. So as the stewards of the only 2 public courses, I think that's really important. But I don't think the golf and the golf clubs should dominate what the land bank does and talks about. Bruce and I just purchased a new home. So we've moved. We've actually moved over in that neighborhood. And I was looking at the land bank fees, and I said, okay, you have just paid a large sum in land bank fees. And I would
And
be
whoever
upset.
bought your old house did the same.
And whoever bought our house did the same. Fortunately, they paid more than we did. But I don't want those fees just to go towards
the golf club.
the golf club, maintaining the golf club, and building a new clubhouse. I think a new clubhouse is essential, and I think a renovation, and it definitely needs locker rooms and banquet space, things like that.
Right.
But some of the numbers being thrown around are really huge.
Well, they were big the last time it was brought up.
Yeah. And my one thing is that whatever gets created has to be available to the public, all aspects of it, because that's where the money's coming from.
Right.
So.
So the golf club, and particularly Maya Comet and the clubhouse, are a big issue.
I
They
think
have
from
to
what I'm
be-
told, they take up a huge amount of time at all of the meetings. And that kind of might put other things off.
Oh, in executive session?
Well, I don't know. I'm not in there. Rumor has it.
Interesting.
Well, they have the budget that they have to go. I mean, they have to look at
Yeah,
what's
but that's
going
all
on
pub-
with those.
That's public.
That's public. That's public. I shouldn't say executive session. Maybe
Yeah.
just what goes on in the meetings.
Yeah.
And not divvy up the two. So.
Okay. Let me flash forward a few years. If you're elected, what would you want to be remembered for?
Making those properties more
Accessible.
they're accessible. Marketing them. I guess marketing is the right word. Making them, people go, oh, I didn't know that. I mean, I took out the Chamber of Commerce book, talking about what you can do. You come to Nantucket, what can you do? And it lists all these things, and nothing about the land bank is listed in that booklet. And so I just think, and then when you get to the properties, we used to have a great map, and now the map is online. But some of us are not going online to look at a map of walking trails. I like that updated and refreshed and available. And the properties are maintained so well. So, and the ones that are easy access are used all the time. It's just there's some others, and
Right.
I'd like to see that. So.
But do you think they're not used by visitors? They're used primarily by year-rounders?
I think it depends on where they are. Out on Nonantum, it's a parking to the beach, and it's, people know about it. And they've got Nobody's parking, then that one on Nonantum, and they're used plenty. But they're used as parking and access to the beach, which is great. But then there's some other properties that walking trails and the Labyrinth, and certainly the new property out in Sconset.
There was a bike path
Farm?
behind, I can't remember the name of the street, back behind the airport, or on the other side of Old South Road from the airport, back along, in where the Labyrinth is too, I think. What's that trail called?
I don't know the name of it. I took it last year, and at some points I thought, I can't believe I'm on Nantucket. This is so different than any place. Yeah, those are the kind of places that, I don't want them overcrowded and full, but they won't be. I just want people to know about them.
So you see, correct me if I'm wrong, but you see your primary role as a steward and as in a sense, a promoter.
Yes.
Of the land bank's properties and continued dedication to their care. Is that a fair?
That is a fair assessment
of your priorities.
And certainly, deciding which parcels or places to purchase or deacquisice if we decide to get rid of some.
No, yeah, that is a huge deal, as we've seen with some.
But I think, back to having some fresh blood. I think all elected positions, the reason that they have term limits, or not term limits, but terms at all, is to bring new faces in. So I just want to be the new face that comes in.
Great.
Right?
Jeanne Miller, candidate for the Nantucket Land Bank. Thank you very much, and good luck.
Thank you, Dan. Thanks very much.